Boxing truth here. I figured I'd talk about Guillermo Rigondeaux a little bit. Haven't talked about him in a while. And I don't really talk about him much because his career has been a waste, and there's not really much to look forward to in his future. As for the past 2 years, he's been fighting a bunch of nobodies. His momentum from the Donaire win, his biggest win of his career to date, still his biggest win of his career, has been derailed. All the momentum's gone. He's been inactive, doesn't fight that much. When he does, he fights nobodies. And he often disappoints when he does fight, especially his last two performances. He's hasn't looked all that good. Doesn't even look like he's the same fighter even. Not as explosive, throws less, even more boring than before. Not blowing these he's not destroying these hand-picked opponents or whoever, whatever, the guys that's only available to fight him. Had a shitty performance against Drian Francisco. And his performance against Dickens wasn't all that special. I mean, you really couldn't take away too much from those 2 rounds. I heard people saying he looked sharp. I didn't see a sharp fighter. I saw a guy that landed very few punches in the fight. He landed 1 punch in the second round and broke the dude's jaw. Domestic level fighter who got his jaw broken in the second round with 1 punch fought with a broken jaw for about much of the round because the punch landed about 30 seconds into that second round. The punch that broke Dickens' jaw. And it was somehow Rigondeaux made a second round stoppage. It was kind of boring. It was an anticlimactic, very disappointing fight. Waited so long for Rigondeaux to fight this nobody, this British level fighter, and that's the way it ended. That's how it went down, and it was very disappointing. And it was a kind of boring fight, not much action. Even the British commentators were actually getting restless as well. But I wanted to talk about Rigondeaux's level a few years ago, and you compare it to now. He's definitely not showing he's definitely not showing that he's the same fighter, especially his last 2 fights. I mean, I was watching some past Rigondeaux fights, but I try to stay away from the stankers that he's had in his career, which has pretty much ruined his career. He's been released from Top Rank in his career. He's been ousted from the networks. No American networks have any interest in showcasing his bouts, which is why it's been difficult for Rigondeaux to get fights. He's had to go abroad to get opportunities or to get in the ring. And it's because he's disappointed on those type of platforms. He's had some stankers against Cordoba, against Joseph Abeco, people walking out of that fight. He did terrible against Drian Francisco, a hand-picked opponent, a guy he was supposed to look explosive against. And you saw what you saw against Jazza Dickens, just not much, not enough. But when you go by his performances against Tion Kennedy, against Rico Ramos, you see that Rigondeaux, at least in those fights against Donaire, you see that Rigondeaux has the tools, the explosiveness to create offense on his own and to even beat a knockout artist. I mean, Rigondeaux is a puncher. I'm not even going to say he's a hype job. I mean, the guy, especially his level 3 years ago, he passes the eye test. I mean, the guy's he's got tremendous footwork, uses his legs to get out of range and counter you. But that's his problem. He waits too much on his opponents, and that's what makes his fights very boring. He just waits too much for his opponents to make mistakes. He's a guy that likes to place his left hand because that's his money shot. And it's one of the best weapons of boxing. I mean, the guy, Rigondeaux is a puncher. The guy's got power. He's got knockout power in his left hand. But he just doesn't throw enough. He doesn't have that killer instinct. That's what pisses me off about Rigondeaux. He has the ability to create knockouts, to be sensational, to be explosive. And he doesn't do it. It's just like he doesn't give a shit. Just cares about winning. Doesn't give a shit about entertaining the fans. And the sad part about it, he has the ability to be a knockout artist, to be explosive. I mean, 3 years ago, he was having these type of performances. He was knocking guys out, looking good in some fights, and then in certain fights, he stinks the joint out. And it's something terrible. It's like something the worst you ever seen before in a fight. Like, you can't imagine how any fight could be this boring. Like his fight against Rion Francisco, and not much happened in the Dickens fight. Just not much action. Barely anything. Any punches were landed. But Rigondeaux, he has only himself to blame on why he's in this position. With the ability to be explosive, he's opted to be in Stankers on the HBO platform. He's been ousted by the network. Top Rank released him because they couldn't do nothing with him. The guy was not performing on network TV, and his guarantee was a little too high for not much. It's not like Top Rank was making any money off the guy. So he's been released. He signed with a new promoter in Rock Nation. Rock Nation really hasn't been able to get him any opportunities. He still has had to fight abroad. He's made some bad decisions in his career, turning down lucrative paydays, great opportunities like the Lomachenko fight. I mean, that would have been the fight for Rigondeaux to really see how good he was, but he didn't want that work. Requested a catch weight. Knew how dangerous Lomachenko is. Perhaps is even a younger, better, stronger version than him. And ended up pricing himself out of the fight, which pretty much means he didn't want the fight. There's also been some misfortune in his career. He could have gotten the Santa Cruz fight. Was in negotiations at one point, but Al Heyman blocked that fight from happening when he bought out Leo Santa Cruz's contract. That would have been another great fight for Rigondeaux. Another great fight to see. Because of Santa Cruz's style. A guy that comes forward, throws a lot of punches, throws a lot of volume. Santa Cruz doesn't strike me as the guy that's scared to throw. That's the thing. A lot of guys, when they fight Rigondeaux, they're hesitant to throw. Because of Rigondeaux's counter-punching ability and his ability to place his left hand shots on you, which is pretty much a power punch. And it's too bad that fight didn't happen. That also would have been a great fight. So, some misfortune for Rigondeaux. Also turning down a fight that where there's really no other fights on the horizon for him. There's really no other fights that he could get. Other guys in the division haven't fought him. Either simply because there's other money fights out there. There's bigger money to be made against other opponents at around the super bantamweight, featherweight divisions. We can call it ducking and dodging, but I don't criticize a fighter for taking a money fight. I mean, I don't criticize a fighter when they behave like a prize fighter. I mean, why? I mean, because y'all would do the same fucking thing. I mean, why would you fight some guy for peanuts when you can fight another guy for way more money? I mean, it's a no-brainer. I mean, I would do the same thing. I mean, that's not ducking and dodging to me. It's being a prize fighter. I criticize a fighter when they turn down a lucrative payday or their biggest payday even, and opt to fight easier work, light work, for not even half of what they was offered. That's what you call ducking and cherry picking. But a fighter that turns down a fight to fight a guy for more money, that's called a prize fight. And that's something I can't criticize a fighter for taking money fights. And that's all Rigondeaux's trying to do. He's trying to get money fights, hasn't been able to get them. Political divides will prevent him to get some fights in the future. Rock Nation has yet to deliver him a big fight. Rigondeaux, it's been like a waste of a career. He's only had the one big win against Donaire. Has done jack shit ever since. Hasn't fought any top opponents. And for what's next for Rigondeaux, it looks like he's got to make a mandatory defense of his WBA strap. Looks like Moses Flores could be next, a Mexican fighter, undefeated, 17 knockouts. It will be a step up in competition, but I don't consider Flores elite at all. I'm not even sure if he's a top 122 pounder, but he's rated in the top 5 on BoxRec. He holds the interim strap for the WBA, so he's the mandatory for Rigondeaux. He's a guy he really can't box. He's a Mexican fighter, tough guy, but not much of a boxer. Not terrible balance. Nowhere near the skill set of what Rigondeaux has, but Rigondeaux he's not wowing me these days, man. Just the guy looks even like he's past it. I mean, he's 36 years old, has gone through periods of inactivity, and now he just doesn't look like the same fighter. It's not explosive, not as explosive anymore. He still has power in his left hand, but he's just not throwing as many punches as he used to. Not looking as fluid and as explosive as he used to. And time is running out for him to get a significant fight. And I just don't see where it's at right now. I mean, at 122. I mean, I would like to see him. There's some guys I like to see him fight, you know. I wouldn't mind seeing the Hugo Ruiz fight, the guy that holds the WBC strap, but I don't know if that can be made. I think he's a Heyman fighter. Moises Flores will be a step in the right direction. At least it'll be a step up in competition, at least. But where is Rigondeaux going to get a big fight? He's still a small 122 pounder, so he could make 118 if he tried. Maybe he could fight a couple of 115 pounders that are in the division, like NU. Maybe a Chocolatito, but that would take some time for those fights to be made. So it's not very realistic that of those fights happening, but this is why I don't talk about Rigondeaux too much. Just not much to look forward to. Has had a wasted career. Only 17 fights since turning pro in 2009. Only has one big win on his resume. And has looked mediocre in his last 2 fights. Nowhere near the standard of Rigondeaux's talents. The Rigondeaux 3 years ago passed the eye test. He was definitely pound for pound level. I'm not even going to argue that he's a hype. I'm not even going to say he's a hype job. But he hasn't done shit lately. And right now he doesn't even deserve pound for pound status because he hasn't fought anybody in 3 years. But 3 years ago he did pass the eye test. He did show that he's a hell of a fighter. But right now it's an unknown. It's unknown where he's at right now. Especially his last 2 fights. It's just not much to take from. And now where Rigondeaux is going to go from here. Just a wasted career. Could have been a much more interesting career to watch. Instead, if he could have had some big fights, could have had that Lomachenko fight. That would have been the biggest fight of his career. And had he won it, he would have gotten the biggest purse of his career. But Rigondeaux didn't want that work. Didn't think he could beat a bigger, stronger, perhaps better fighter than him in Lomachenko. But y'all let me know what y'all think. What can Rigondeaux do? Where does Rigondeaux go from here? What opponents out there are you interested in watching a fight? I don't enjoy watching Rigondeaux fight, especially not this version of Rigondeaux. 3 years ago, 4 years ago, he had the ability to put on some explosive performances and was worth watching, but nowadays, I'm not even sure Rigondeaux's anywhere near the fighter he was 3 years ago. This is Boxing Truth. I'm out.